So let's talk about one of the biggest assets most of us will ever own, our homes. There's a really fascinating battle brewing right now over the best way to sell one. You've got the old school public way of doing things on one side, and this new, more secretive marketplace that's really starting to take off on the other.
And that brings us to this kind of wild question. Is the absolute best way to sell your home to keep it a secret? I know, it sounds totally backward, right? But believe it or not, it's a strategy that is gaining some serious momentum.
But before we get into the new way, we got to understand the old way. Let's look at how things have pretty much always been done. The public default, the conventional wisdom that's dominated real estate for decades. And right at the heart of that public market is the MLS, the multiple listing service. Honestly, the best way to think of it is like the Grand Central Station for every house that's for sale. Its entire job, its whole reason for being, is to blast your property's info out to as many agents and potential buyers as humanly possible. And you know the logic behind the MLS is super simple. And for a long time, we all thought it was basically ironclad. The more eyeballs you get on your home, the more offers you're likely to get, and all those offers should, in theory, create a bidding war that drives the price up to its absolute peak. It's a formula built entirely on exposure. But what if that formula isn't the only way to play the game? And this is where things get interesting. This is the compelling challenge from a totally different philosophy, the allure of exclusivity.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Because when you look at other super high-value markets, mass exposure is the absolute last thing you want. I mean, think about it. Rare Ferraris, priceless works of art, vintage wines. Those deals almost never happen out in the open. They're done behind closed doors, through quiet conversations and trusted networks, not on some public stage.
And it really gets to this core idea. For certain things, the very act of keeping the sale private actually adds to its value, to its mystique. Scarcity and privacy stop being just features. They become a part of the product itself.
So when you try to apply this model to real estate, the whole argument becomes about one thing: control. The pitch is, if you limit who gets to see the property, you can perfectly shape the story around it. You can create this intense feeling of urgency among a small, hand-picked group of buyers, and hopefully drive demand way up through that powerful feeling of exclusivity.
Now, that all sounds pretty great, right? A bespoke, high-end, exclusive approach to selling your home. But here's where the idea starts to get, well, a little complicated. Here's where it can start to break down.
The real problem pops up when these private networks just get too big. What happens when they grow so large they don't really feel exclusive anymore? When they start acting less like a private club and more like a whole separate, parallel system with its own gatekeepers.
And you can really see the difference here. A true private network is supposed to be small, carefully curated, and built on real relationships. But when a massive brokerage creates its own internal off-market platform, it's not really that anymore, is it? It becomes a parallel MLS. It's still a huge system based on transactions, it just has a different bouncer at the door.
And this brings us to what might be the most important point of all, what most sellers are really looking for. The debate isn't actually about public versus private. It's about something way more fundamental.
This quote just hits the nail on the head. For almost everybody selling their home, the goal isn't really secrecy. They're not trying to create some exclusive vibe. What they want, what they need, is certainty. The certainty that they got the best possible price from the biggest possible pool of qualified buyers.
So then you have to ask the big question: who really benefits the most when a listing is kept off-market? The incentives? Well, they don't always line up perfectly. Sure, the seller gets privacy and maybe a little less hassle, but they also risk getting a lower price because fewer people saw the home. Meanwhile, the agent and the brokerage, they have a much better shot at representing both the buyer and the seller, which means they can capture the entire commission by keeping the whole deal in-house.
So look, the crucial point here isn't that private listings are automatically bad. They're not. It's that a true choice has to be an informed choice. A seller has every right in the world to choose privacy, but they need to understand exactly what they might be giving up in that trade: full market exposure and all the competition that comes with it.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up. This entire debate, all the back and forth, it really comes down to one simple question you should ask yourself.
Just think about it this way. What if all the car dealers in your area suddenly stopped listing their best inventory online? They hid their best cars in the back and only showed them to a select few people. You'd immediately start to wonder, wait, what am I missing out on? As more and more homes are sold behind this private curtain, that is the exact question every single buyer and seller needs to start asking.